Good news, everyone. And yes, that was a Futurama reference. My tumor shrunk. Tumor shrunk, tumor shrunk. That's my happy dance. This is the second MRI in a row that has shown a decrease in mass in my tumor. And I was a little bit nervous about sharing it too much for the first run because I was worried that it was a bit of a fluke. But now that this is the second time that it's happened, I feel much more confident in saying that things are moving in the right direction. I had an MRI on Saturday, and then I had a video appointment with the Mayo Clinic yesterday, which was Tuesday. And they were able to show me the images. And of course, the tumor is still there, but there is this awesome picture that shows this whole portion of tumor that is now gone. I mean, it's an incredible difference. Even the oncologist from the Mayo Clinic was super excited. I mean, normally when they talk to you, they have to kind of keep an even tone of voice, and they don't usually tend to get too excited, but I don't know if it was just because it was this woman or if it was because it was now the second time in a row, but this lady actually was really excited for me, and you know, she was really confident in what was happening, and that made me feel so much more confident in what was happening too, you know, so I'm very happy today. But in order for me to talk about what I've been doing that they believe is really working for me, I have to tell my chemotherapy story. So, I started chemotherapy at the same time that I started radiation. And I did 6 weeks of a low-dose chemotherapy during radiation, which I guess is pretty normal for what they do. Now, when I got to the Mayo Clinic and they were talking to me about what was going to happen to me, they had warned me right off the bat that chemotherapy probably wouldn't do anything for me. Traditional chemotherapy, the part where you have a port that makes you lose your hair, and that what most people talk about, like I said in a previous video, does not work for brain cancer because it can't pass through the blood-brain barrier. So they have created an oral chemotherapy, so it's a pill, specifically for brain cancer. The one that I was on was called Temidor or temozolomide, depending on the brand name. And like I said, it's a pill that you would take every night. And so during my radiation treatment, I was taking a low dose of chemotherapy the entire time. And during those 6 weeks, I didn't have an MRI in the middle anywhere. You got one right when you got there, and then you got one right before you leave. And so that was where they would really see what was going on. Well, like I said, they had warned me that it probably wouldn't do much for me. But when you're trying to stay positive, I just kept telling myself, nope, that's not me. This is going to work for me. The chemo is going to work for me. The chemo is going to work for me. So by the end of the 6 weeks, I had kind of forgotten that they had told me that it wouldn't do anything. So when I got my MRI at the end of my 6 weeks of radiation, and it looked horrible. It basically looked like my tumor had doubled in size. And that's where they were saying that they were shocked that I was functioning still, because they said looking at my scans, they thought the entire right side of my body shouldn't be working. I mean, the oncologist told me that he was nervous for my appointment because he was expecting to see a woman walk in dragging her foot with half of her face not working, with all these horrible side effects. So when he walked in and saw me and saw that I was functioning pretty normally, he was basically in shock. I mean, he kept having me do tests. He's like, pull on my hands and let me test the strength in both your arms. Let me test the strength in your legs and follow the light with your eyes. And he was just like, wow, I cannot believe how good you're doing considering how bad your MRI looks. I couldn't believe it either. They would show me the images and I was just like, whoa, that looks nasty. So, like I said, I kind of forgot that they had told me that the chemo wouldn't work. And so when they were like, yeah, you know, we can't really tell if this is radiation effect, which apparently radiation effect makes the tumor look angry. It can make it look bigger. And so they weren't really sure if it was radiation effect or if it was actual tumor growth. But they said, okay, you know, when you get home, we're going to have you continue to do the chemotherapy. And so what they did was, for 5 days out of every month, I would take a progressively higher dose of chemotherapy. And I did that for 2 months after I got home. I did the 5 days of the higher dose, and then the next month I did the 5 days of the even higher dose. And then I went in for another MRI, and there was no change in my tumor. They were like, if it was radiation effect, it should have gone down by now. We think maybe this is actual tumor growth, and it is really not looking good for you. But basically, the chemotherapy is not working at all. And so they had me stop taking the chemotherapy, which I was partially freaked out, obviously, because I wanted it to work. But I was also kind of glad because the chemotherapy did give me some side effects. So this is going to be a little bit of potty talk, just a forewarning. But the biggest side effect that I had from the oral chemotherapy was constipation. It was pretty bad. I've been joking that I have never worried about my bathroom habits so much in my life. Because they basically told me, if you're not going to the bathroom once a day, you need to be doing something different. You need to be, you know, taking stool softeners, which I started taking. I was taking Miralax. That is my biggest piece of advice if you're struggling with constipation from your chemo. Miralax was my lifesaver. And it's nice because it's not actually a drug, which I really appreciate. And I'm sure a lot of you probably do, because if you're taking chemotherapy plus all these other drugs they want you to take, taking another drug just kind of sucks. So Miralax is that powder that you mix into, you know, water or tea or whatever you're drinking and chug it down. So Miralax really helped me a ton when I was going through chemotherapy. So for me, the biggest, like I said, the biggest thing that I dealt with was the constipation. Well, if you've ever been constipated, which all of us have, you know how nauseous it can also make you. So I really was just sick to my stomach every day, nauseous, had little appetite a lot of the days because I was just, my body was full, kind of. But it actually got to the point where I wasn't able to go to the bathroom for about 3 days. And it was making me very sick to my stomach. And so we contacted my nurses, and they told me to go and get that drink that people who are going in for colonoscopies have to drink, that clear, nasty liquid that just makes you go to the bathroom. And so my mom went and picked that up for me, and I started sipping it down. Well, at first I started to chug it because I'm just like, all right, let's get this over with. No. I took a couple big swigs of it and immediately felt like I was going to throw it up. So I just stopped, and I took probably 2 hours to sip down the rest of it. And as I'm sipping down the rest of it, it's just making me more and more sick to my stomach, to the point where I started throwing up. And I mean, I was like, nope, I'm not going to throw up. I'm not going to throw up. And then it would just, I mean, I was throwing up quite a bit. And, you know, bless my mom's heart, she's got a weak stomach. And so she was really trying her hardest to be there and support me. But the whole time I'm throwing up, I mean, she's behind me like, oh no, you know, getting kind of sick too. And it actually, at one point, I ended up puking so hard that I missed the can that I was puking in, and I puked on the floor, and it was just horrible. And so we called my nurses back and told them what was going on, And they told me because I can't keep anything down, I need to go to the emergency room. So I went into the emergency room that night, and because I was throwing up, and that could be a sign of COVID, they had to quarantine me in my own room, and they wouldn't let my mom come in with me, which really sucked. And so they did an MRI of my torso this time to make sure that I didn't have like a bowel obstruction or anything, which thankfully I had none of that. It ended up being okay. But I did have to spend quite a few hours in the emergency room by myself, and luckily I had this really amazing nurse, and I can't remember his name, but I wrote a big long letter about him, you know, like a comment section thing about how good of a job he did. He really made me feel comfortable while I was there, and he would just sit in the room with me and talk with me because he knew that it sucked so much that I had to be there, and that I was going through what I was going through, and that I had to do that alone because they wouldn't let her come in with me. So thank you again to the nurses at the Mayo Clinic and at the Rochester Hospital. You guys are all so great. But yeah, so it got bad enough to the point where I ended up in the emergency room, but we kind of got that taken care of. And like I said, the Miralax was really my lifesaver. I started drinking quite a bit of that, and it really helped keep me regular. So, yeah, so like I said, after I got home and I continued the maintenance chemo, and they were just like, okay, it's not working. We need to switch up whatever you're doing. And so they switched me to this new treatment, which is a blood infusion. It's basically like an IV bag. I'm not even sure that I should say the drug name because, again, I'm not a doctor. I'm not handing out medical advice here. But maybe if things aren't working for you, your doctor will know what I'm talking about if you say that it's a blood infusion for brain cancer. And this drug has only actually been around for about 4 years. So it is pretty new. And again, just like chemo in general, there's a whole long list of nasty side effects. And to be honest with you guys, I haven't experienced any of them. The day that I go in for my infusion and maybe a day or two afterwards, I'm pretty tired. I don't know if that's from maybe the stress of just having to do it, but that is one of the possible side effects. And so I do get a bit tired, but other than that, I mean, it really doesn't affect me. So now every 3 weeks, I go into my local cancer center, which is great that I don't have to travel so far all the time. And they hook me up to what essentially, just like I said, looks like an IV bag. And it takes about a half an hour for the actual infusion to happen. You know, it takes a little bit longer to get in there and get set up, and they have to make it every time I go in there. The actual pharmacy in the hospital makes this drug specifically for me every time they go in. And so I sit there for a half an hour, and thankfully my mom is able to come with me. And so we play little trivia games on her phone while we're sitting there, or we're just, chatting, and the nurses will bring food and whatever you want while you're dealing with it. So I always get hot tea and a warm blanket because that's how I am. And so every 3 weeks I do that. And so far it's been going really good. And up till this point, every 3 weeks when I would go in, I would also do an MRI at the same time just to watch and see how things are going. And like I said at the beginning, this is the second time in a row now where it's shown that my tumor has gotten smaller. Now, they don't know, again, with the radiation effects, they don't know if it's radiation effect that's calming down or if it's actual tumor shrinkage. They're still not 100% sure on what it's doing. But this time around, I don't have to have another MRI for 6 weeks this time. And that is because they're pretty confident that as I continue these infusion treatments, that it's going to just get better and better. And they think that if they wait 6 weeks, that will be a better indication for them if it's radiation effect that's getting better or if it's actual tumor shrinkage. And so I won't really have an MRI update for another 6 weeks, but hey, this one was great, and it's probably going to be great enough to last me 6 weeks. But yeah, so they're really hopeful that this is working. This is doing something for me. It's, it's really helping. And I thank God every day that I got cancer when I did, I guess, because like I said, this drug was only invented 4 years ago. That's not a long time ago. And if I had gotten cancer 4 years ago, they wouldn't have been able to give it to me. And I probably would have just been stuck in that space of, hey, the chemotherapy didn't work for you. Sorry. And I don't know what they would have done. I have no idea what they could have done, what they would have done 4 years ago, but now they're giving me this new drug and it's doing something, you guys. So yeah, that's my chemo story. For me, like I said, it was a lot of bathroom problems, but after some trial and error, we really got it kind of under control. And again, if you have questions, if you have concerns, ask your doctor. They will be able to help you. They will have something in mind that can help you with these side effects, so don't be afraid to ask. Oh, I have to show you this shirt that my friend got me for Christmas because I feel it's very appropriate for today. It says, kindness is free and life is good, which couldn't be more true for me today. So have a great day, everyone. I know I will. See you guys later.